Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the philosophy of a 19th century saint whose ideas on compassion and self-discipline, well, they feel more relevant today than ever before. His name was Valalar, and his whole story really kicks off with this almost unbelievable capacity for empathy. Just let that sink in for a second. I withered whenever I saw a withered crop. That single powerful line is our doorway into a totally revolutionary way of thinking. It's about a kind of compassion that goes way beyond just people or animals, right to the very plants that give all of us life. So you have to ask, right? What kind of person actually feels the pain of a dying plant like it's their own? To even get close to an answer, we have to understand the world he was living in. Because this wasn't just some pretty poetic idea. No, it was a direct response to a level of suffering that is almost impossible for us to imagine. See, the crisis that shaped Valar wasn't a natural disaster. It wasn't just a random drought. It was a man-made famine, a catastrophe that was literally engineered by colonial policy. And to get who Valar was, you first have to get how this all went down. So for generations, Indian farmers grew what people needed to eat, things like millet and rice. But then the British East India Company came in and basically forced them to switch. Instead of food for their communities, they had to grow cash crops, cotton, sugarcane, indigo, stuff that would be shipped off and sold for a profit. The result of shifting from food to commodities? It was devastating, and frankly, it was completely predictable. The scale of this tragedy is just staggering. This wasn't just people going hungry, it was a full-blown apocalypse. Right there in the Madras presidency, where Valalar lived, it's estimated that more than 10 million people died. 10 million! It got so grim they called it the skull famine, literally because of the number of unburied bodies left behind. And right in the middle of this nightmare lived a man named Ramalingam Adigalar, who we now know as Valalar. He wasn't just some distant observer, you know. He felt this collective agony on a deeply personal, deeply spiritual level. It was in his bones. And this takes us right back to that incredible quote. When Valalar saw a withered crop, he didn't see a bad investment or a loss of profit. He saw a life being extinguished. He saw the first domino falling in a chain reaction that always ended with a starving person. He just got it. The absolute, undeniable connection between all life. If the plants starve, the people starve. Simple as that. But here's the thing about Valar. He wasn't just about feeling the pain. He was a man of action. He refused to let his anguish just sit there as an abstract idea. Instead, he channeled it into one of the most amazing and long-lasting acts of service you can imagine. In 1867, right at the peak of the famine, he starts the Satya Dharma Salai, the Hall of True Dharma. He personally lights a stove, a hearth, and declares that its fire will be unquenchable. And you know what? It's almost unbelievable. But for more than 150 years since that very day, that exact same fire has never gone out. It has cooked meals for anyone, and I mean anyone, no matter who they are, who walks in hungry. And this really shows you just how radical his whole idea was. I mean, sure, kings and rich merchants had always started charities, but those things were always temporary, right? They only lasted as long as the money did. Valalar said his Dharma Salai would run on a totally different kind of fuel, truth and grace. He designed it to be permanent, powered not by money, but by a spiritual principle. So this unquenchable fire, this permanent kitchen, it wasn't just a building. It was the living, breathing embodiment of his entire philosophy. It was the core idea that drove everything he taught. And that philosophy has a name, Jiva Karunyam. It's such a powerful concept. It means compassion and mercy for all living beings, not just people, not just cute animals, but everything. And it's not about just being nice. It comes from this deep spiritual conviction that the exact same life force, the same soul, is sparking away inside every single creature. For Valalar, this wasn't just theory, it was intensely practical. He taught that the same soul, the Atman, is in a tiny ant and a giant elephant. No difference. He saw hunger not as a social issue, but as a disease, a pinny. And for that disease, there's only one medicine: food. And that's why he said the absolute highest form of worship, the greatest prayer you could ever offer, is to feed someone who's hungry. So once he laid down this foundation of compassion for everything out there, Valalar said, okay, now the real work begins inside. The path forward demanded an equally tough inner journey. Discipline over your own self, your own senses. He called it Indriya Ojukam. And he started with the most basic thing we all do: eating. He drew this super sharp line between paji, which is true hunger, your body actually signaling it needs fuel, and rusi, which is just the craving of your tongue for a pleasant taste. I mean, how modern does that sound in our world of constant snacking? Think about it. Are you eating because you're actually hungry, or just because your tongue wants a little party? And this spiritual idea led to very specific, practical advice. He told people, hey, cut back on the salt, pointing out that it causes water retention and illness. He said to avoid chili and to go easy on things like tamarind. The goal was simple, but so deep. Eat to live, don't live to eat. If you can master the cravings of your tongue, you've started to master your entire self. Now, this whole demanding journey, this life of extreme compassion for others and extreme discipline for yourself, it wasn't just about being a good or healthy person. For Valalar, all of this was leading somewhere much more profound and honestly pretty startling. This is where Valalar makes this truly mind-blowing claim. He taught that the ultimate goal of his path was to achieve a deathless life. He believed that through this intense practice, it was actually possible to overcome physical death itself, to literally transform the mortal, physical body into an eternal, divine body of pure light. And this wasn't some secret path only for a few chosen elites. No, Valalar insisted that this potential for a deathless life was there for anyone who genuinely followed the path. The final step was to look inside and have that light bulb moment, to realize that your true self isn't this body. It's the divine, formless, animating force that makes you you. And so we go from the very real pain of a withered crop all the way to this vast metaphysical goal. Valar's path leaves us with this incredible idea to chew on. He said the ultimate reality is Vetridam, the empty space inside of us. You know, the space in your nostrils that lets you breathe, the space in your stomach that receives food, the space that allows life to happen. He said God is that space. So what does it mean if the greatest truth isn't out there in some faraway heaven, but right here, in the simple, essential emptiness inside you?